I have a lot to say about this episode, so I know it is breaking a long-standing tradition, but unfortunately this video might have to be longer than 4 minutes and 20 seconds. I know, it's really a tragedy, but it's important so that I can talk about this episode and convey my full feelings on its contents and share a sentiment I feel is present in a lot of this adaptation. I'm gonna be mostly talking about episode 12, but what I bring up will be applicable to most of the other episodes. I'm gonna be comparing this episode a lot to the manga, which might make me sound like an elitist, but I will try to be unbiased and explain myself thoroughly, since there are only a few story beats I want to thoroughly cover in this episode. Before you leave a negative comment though, comparisons are going to be lesser so criticism of the anime, and more often than not, an advertisement for the manga. Moving on. This episode starts with a point of view of Aki speaking with Himeno, a flashback of episode 6. Himeno finds out that Aki is a minor, which seems to be a recurring bad habit of hers, just forgetting to find out people's ages. She decides to hold off against giving Aki her cigarette and instead holds on to it, saying she'll give it back to him when you are a grown-up and need something to take the edge off, which is pretty similar to what is said in the manga. She says she'll give it back to him when you grow up. If you ever want to rely on something, I'll give it back. On a slight tangent, I want to talk about the manga's paneling, often going outside of what is traditional in order to set up and convey a unique feeling or perspective. Point of view shots are not common in manga, but are occasionally used, alongside traditionally odd paneling, like this 2-page 12-panel POV shot of Himeno. These panels, albeit unconventional, allow for unique staging and intimate moments that cannot be shown as well through more traditional paneling. It gives the reader ample time to notice small changes in the character's expressions, and that's what allows for these intimate moments to be so soft, even when interspliced in an action-oriented moment in the story. This same effect through paneling is difficult to convey through animation. Since you rely on one point of view on a rail, you can't take the time to inspect and appreciate small details and expression when the next frame comes so soon. This paneling carries over to his other works though too, most notably his one-shots Look Back and Goodbye Eri. There will sometimes be entire page spreads dedicated to subtle changes in expression, often with no dialogue or anything to distract you from what's happening right in front of you. It's these quiet moments that allow intimacy with the reader, which happens a lot in Chainsaw Man 2. It takes a lot of trust from the author in order to absorb these details and not just rush by them since there's no dialogue to read. But it's up to the reader to absorb these panels, since there's no ham-fisted text telling you how characters feel. It shows you. This is often one of the problems with the anime that I find hard to put into words. Even though it looks incredible and is an astounding marvel of the animation medium, it still stands as no replacement for what Fujimoto has crafted in the manga. So please, if you love the show, then read the manga. If you truly love Chainsaw Man, I promise you it's worth the read. Back to the matter at hand. I think the anime's phrasing of Himeno's dialogue is fine. It conveys what is important, but I think that the manga's phrasing is a little more accurate. Aki is relying on Himeno one last time, and she's giving him that cigarette back. This is his last real interaction with Himeno. She may have died prior to this, but her influence carried over until Aki needed her later on. The anime's phrasing is still good though, because he does need something to take the edge off, and the ghost devil giving him the cigarette is how he realizes that he can take the edge off one more time with Himeno's memory. Onto the cigarette itself. It says Easy Revenge, which is a nod to Fully Cooley's iconic cigarette that says Never Knows Best. Easy Revenge is an accurate phrasing, in which he really is getting an easy revenge for Himeno because of his memory from her. Himeno was open about her devil contract, but Aki was much more of a stickler, saying she shouldn't be so open about it. But her being open about her devil is what saved Aki here, as he remembered that Himeno said the ghost devil cannot see since she has no eyes, and that she senses fear. Aki, no longer afraid, severs the ghost devil's head. These quiet panels leading up to the severing really capture the determination in his actions. They squeeze a point of view shot in the leading up to it in the anime, which I don't really understand. I think Aki just walking up and the flowers flying off of her back would have been better, but also there's no wind indoors, so maybe it was a logistical change rather than a stylized change. The actual severing of the head looks great, and I think it really looks phenomenal. Something a little bit funny that I noticed is the size of the corridor. In the manga, the limbs of the ghost devil really push up against the walls of the corridor, which makes the space feel so much more cramped. But the corridor feels even bigger in the anime. Kind of a pointless thing to point out, but isn't this a hotel? Why do they need a corridor this large? I'm sorry, I'm aware that this is pointless, but I think it's also fun to point stuff like this out. Sawatari is about to use the snake devil in order to retaliate, but before that Aki says not to kill her, revealing that Kobeni has snuck behind Sawatari with a knife to her neck. Everything from this point on is pretty straightforward when compared to the manga and is pretty accurate to the source material. I mentioned this in the previous episode, but the zombies in the manga are so much scarier than in the anime. But this change is very acceptable as the style from the manga is much more difficult to translate to fluid animation, so I have no gripes about this change in the slightest, especially since it has no effect on the quality of the show. The show adds this scene of Power mischievously grinning, which is definitely a positive addition, although some might say it spoils her intention and could cripple the comedic timing of her outburst. Although although it goes by so fast that I don't think it's an issue. Everything else is very faithful to the source material. This is another one of my favorite panels, and I think it's been done thorough justice. But as usual from an adaptation, a lot of the detail is sacrificed for more dynamic movement. The confrontation with Katana Man is well accurate. It only really changes the side that the panel is shown from. Maybe there's a more in-depth rhyme or reason for this, but more often than not, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. A lot of the time, the protagonist will be shown facing right, and the antagonist will be shown facing left. A common theme in 2D games for many years, although this is not some unbreakable rule that must be followed, so I have no problems with these changes, especially since they are exchanged for more dynamic angles and isometric shots, which are harder to do. Katana Man and Denji are not on the same page, so Katana Man exposes a knife and Denji pulls his ripcord. These scenes are done proper justice too, being fairly faithful to the source material from the manga. Unfortunately, we are now faced with this adaptation's greatest injustice so far. In the manga, while they are transitioning from their human forms to their devil forms, Denji has the moment to realize the stance Katana Man is in. He only has a split second to recognize that he's about to do the move that got him last time, his quick slice that cut him in half. This is excluded from the anime for a sweeping shot of the outside of the building, which you could argue is the camera mimicking Katana Man's movement as he slices through the building and shoots out the window. But I think this is a cheap replacement for something that makes no sense to remove. The sweeping shot of the building only stands to gain from the proper context, knowing that behind those walls is Katana Man rushing Denji, and then having it directly shown to us. Then we have it. What I find to be the greatest injustice this show has displayed. This kind of makes me hurt internally. In order to explain why I feel this way, I need to show you one of my favorite panels from the manga. In the manga, we have this gorgeous shot of the devilish duo shooting out of one of the highest floors in the building. The debris shooting from the destruction of the wall makes sense, and you get a clear view of the city, showing us just how far up these two are. It also shows the pair as they begin to clash. The velocity of this panel is palpable, and complements the setup shot from the previous page incredibly well. But in the anime, I don't think this could have been done any worse. They completely obscure the city. They completely obscure the clashing of Chainsaw Man and Katana Man. I don't like being overtly harsh or critical, but I think this is an iconic panel from the manga that has been totally butchered. I think this also goes to show a consistent flaw that I find through much of the rest of the anime as well. Instead of doing justice to a scene like this, they'd rather obscure the vision of Fujimoto by blasting it with dust, debris, and rubble. So much smoke that you can't even see what is going on. This is not an omnipresent issue throughout the show, but this is definitely the most egregious problem with the show that I've had so far. I've been counting down the days for this panel to be animated, and I hate to say that I'm kind of disappointed in this panel's execution. I will get over it, of course, but it still sucks to see. Everything after this looks great too. Denji and Samurai falling as they face each other while plummeting to the road below is executed really well, so why would they butcher such a crucial panel as the introduction to one of, if not the most anticipated fight of the season? This panel is more so replaced by a series of scenes. The manga goes, panel, face off, face off, face off, kerplunk, and train. But in the anime, it's panel, backshot, face off, individual close-ups, falling, face off, close-up, and then the new scenes where they have an opportunity to go for some more hand-to-hand combat. If I rustled your feathers by being overtly critical of the adaptation of a Chainsaw Man panel, then I have some good news for you, because I have a lot of positive things to say now. If there's one thing that you can take from the anime, it's definitely that it has longer fight scenes than in the manga. Sometimes the manga may pull off certain panels or scenes better than the anime does, but the anime definitely manages to get more screen time with tight, dynamic fight scenes that help immerse the viewer in the ensuing battle. Speaking of, this fight scene here is pretty incredible. Dynamic angles and shots, hefty and weighty blows, realistic balance and movements, CGI that blends into the 2D scenes seamlessly, and an excellent choreography that shows just how harshly Denji is being pushed into a corner. Visually, you can tell that Denji's outclassed. He is gaining no ground. He's continually being pushed back, and that feeling is incredibly well executed in this sequence. Then, the train scene. Denji's landing is much more abrasive in the anime, and he has no time to ask where Katana Man went as he lands right in front of him. They have some time to spit some anime-only dialogue that isn't present in the manga, which I think is a nice touch, although I think I enjoy the non-stop combat from the manga more, where Katana Man lands right on Denji and smashes through the train car. It doesn't make sense that Katana Man would be interested in why Denji fights. Why would he care? This seems more like ham-fisted dialogue to tell the viewer why Denji's fighting, rather than an exchange that Katana Man is actually interested in. I don't mind in the end though, since it gives people who might just be tuning into this episode from their TV context to his actions. It also gives us more time to absorb something I've coined as an on top of a moving train conversation or sequence. Something I think this world needs more of. It was in Mugen Train, it was in Spider-Man 2, and now it's in Chainsaw Man, and it's pulled off beautifully. We get this gorgeous choreography of the two swinging blades before Denji gets blown back, and then we get the panel where he crushes him through the train car. This manga panel was just pushed back to once again make the fight longer, which I'm all for. One of the only things I thought was unfortunate about the Chainsaw Man manga was that a lot of the fights were generally short, but this was something I was okay with because I didn't mind being absorbed in the story and the more mundane aspects of life for Denji and the world that he lived in. These were details that I was willing to get invested in. But I think the manga also benefited from the fact that the fights were not drawn out, but instead compact and high energy. The manga almost never slows down, which I think is a really valuable asset of Fujimoto's style. Once again, we get a moment to recognize what Katana Man's going to do next as he gets into his stance. But Denji's next to a civilian passenger of the train. In the manga, Denji yells, "Whoa, come on now," as if he's shocked that Katana Man would get a civilian involved with their fight. A nod to the humanity that Denji has and that Katana Man does not. Especially poignant since Katana Man was shaming Denji earlier for not feeling bad about killing Zombie Mafia or Zombie Grandpa. In the manga, Denji grabs the civilian in order to protect her, but in the anime, he doesn't even really seem to do anything specific in order to protect her. In the manga, the reason he couldn't retaliate or prepare was because he had to make sure the civilian was going to be okay, protecting her from the blade by getting his arm severed. But in the anime, it seemed like he protected her by not doing anything specific. It didn't seem like he saved this woman, but rather just happened to get his arm cut off in front of her. If anything, this makes Katana Man look better than Denji, since Denji had no change in his behavior, and Katana Man went out of his way to avoid this woman. This doesn't really bother me other than the fact that it misses an opportunity to show a side of Denji's character, and how he'd go to such lengths to protect a random person. Katana Man gears up his stance to go again, and Denji says, "Hey, we should ban that move." But in the anime, he says, "Come on, can you try something new?" Changes like these don't bother me too much, but I feel like exchanging dialogue like this is kind of pointless. Katana Man still could have said, "You wish," in response to the "we should ban that move" remark. This scene gains nothing from changing the dialogue. In fact, you could even argue that it takes away from Denji's childish nature and makes him seem more snide or conniving. In the following scene, the only difference is that Denji's on his knees rather than standing, and Katana Man is standing instead of crouched. This is a fine change that actually makes sense, giving off the implication that Katana Man is the one with the upper hand, and Denji is the one at a loss. This switches up as Denji stands, but little changes like this show a lot of intention from the director sometimes. Denji looks absolutely rabid as he rushes Katana Man and says he still has a chainsaw on his head, which will be an important detail in just a moment. We then get one of the best adaptations from an iconic panel so far. Attentive viewers will notice that Denji kicked, and that his leg is a blur in this flash of movement. I spoke earlier about how the manga gives the reader time to absorb these details, which makes the outcome of this fight more obvious in the manga, but the anime benefits greatly by only showing this for a moment, rewarding attentive viewers and not giving away what might happen with the opportunity to scrutinize details with close inspection. The anime also benefits greatly from the sense of weight and movement that comes with each strike from Katana Man. Denji and Samurai sliding away from one another after they strike is much stronger in the anime, as in the manga they are only maybe 4 feet away from one another for the sake of shot composition and staging the panel. This is then followed up by another incredibly faithful and wonderful adaptation of the source material, where Samurai gets split in twain by Denji's foot saw, harkening back to that one detail where Denji called attention to the chainsaw on his head, allowed him to catch Katana Man off guard by slicing him with a saw that he conjured with his leg. Although it goes without saying that the manga panel of Samurai splitting is better in the manga, it's also an unfair comparison to make since the anime has so much more to account for. Like, you could say the manga does a better job at the split, but the anime does a better job at the blood and guts splattering, which is an obvious point to make. It's no wonder that the manga is going to excel in stills and the anime is going to excel in movement and weight. The following scenes of Katana Man falling to the floor and the shot from the side definitely benefit the scene and allow for more time to understand what just happened, while also offering more content that looks really good. Another thing that the anime is great at is situational awareness. Sometimes in the manga it's really easy to get lost and not fully understand where you are, but zoom out shots like these, and even some of the 3D landscape shots from earlier in the show, provide a great point of reference for understanding the location of the fight and provide a more in-depth awareness of their surroundings. We now move on to the final chapter that gets animated, and it's weird to think that this is the final chapter that's being animated until season 2 releases, especially knowing that the manga is already so far ahead to the point that part 1 has ended, hiatus has passed, and part 2 has started. But it's also a good thing that they have ample time to adapt the source material. Samurai wakes up with his hands bound, tied to the train. Everything here is practically a one-to-one recreation of the manga panels, but with that Mappa style that has been implemented into the show. I hate the dialogue change from Denji though. In the manga he says, "Big talk coming from a loser bitch," but in the anime he says, "Losers are always the loudest." I come to find that these dialogue changes don't particularly upset or frustrate me, but I definitely think that they change Denji's character in a way that I don't personally agree with. I love Denji because he is childish and rude. He is grotesque and deviant. He is an asshole. He has no full grasp or understanding of the world he inhabits and only uses pleasantries when speaking to women he wants to reach for space with. He's a degenerate, childish person, and dialogue changes like this make him seem less like that. He becomes less like this in the manga over time, but that's because he grows and changes. These changes to his childish and immature nature are being made so early on in the show that I wonder how much room he has to really grow out of his immaturity when the later chapters start getting adapted. Mappa, stop being cowards and let Denji say loser bitch. This continues when changes are made to dialogue in the following sentence, where they remove a line calling Samurai an asshole for killing Himeno. He is an asshole for killing her. They remove Denji calling him a bitch right afterwards too, removing even another bitch bomb from Samurai again in the following sentence, albeit replaced with dog, a more fitting term to replace it. Regardless, Mappa, you don't need to remove the harsh language when Future Devil is dropping F-bombs that weren't even in the manga. I don't get it. Why make Denji less crude? They're actively giving him less room to improve his character and cramping his potential for noticeable growth. Everything after this is pretty spot on, but once again executed with that extra Mappa flair. Although, never be able to shoot off anything but blanks is, to me, more funny than give him nut shots, which kinda sounds innuendous. Which is not a word, but it is now. Denji's face is faithful here, but the manga is as usual much sillier. Aki pulls out the cigarette, and with one final message from Himeno, Aki realizes that revenge is not always something to take so serious. It's not always about avenging your dead family by killing the strongest devil to ever live. Sometimes it could be as simple as avenging your friend by kicking the ever-living shit out of their killer's balls. Aki lifts up his sleeve and asks what he gets if he wins. Denji says, his balls of course, but should have went with the manga's whatever is left of his balls. As Mafia members begin to get arrested, everyone relaxes, and Angel Devil looks to the sky. This is a gorgeous adaptation of the manga panel that takes advantage of the animation medium by showing off the golden hour of lighting, as the light reflects off of the building's windows and the day comes to a close. The same way that the day comes to a close, Denji and Aki find closure in destroying this man's nuts. This nut-kicking scene is another beautiful adaptation of the source material, showing the deep anguish of Katana Man as his nuts get turned concave. This is an incredibly faithful adaptation of these last few pages of extravagant nut kicking, some of the closest one-to-one adaptation that Mappa has shown yet, including a shot from the back of the nut demolition, an angle prime for maximum nard flattening, ending out with the requiem of a man with a squished sack. I often thought requiem had to be a song, but it is not exclusive to just songs. So for those of you who have heard the word requiem before, but aren't sure of the exact definition, it's an act or token of remembrance for the souls of the dead. I think Himeno would be proud. After that, Sawatari commits seppuku, through either volition or the terms of her contract with the Gun Devil. This scene's quite faithful, and I think it is improved by the absolutely silly noise that Kobeni makes. The Gun Devil mass that they have accumulated has finally started to move towards the source, but before we find out where it's going, we zoom in on Makima and it cuts to the ending. This is an excellent way to set up anticipation for the next season, as well as move towards the goal. The ending is practically a continuation of the episode, which I think is one of the smartest moves Mappa could have made, as it allows a proper setup for the next sequence that takes place in the manga. Denji, Power, and Aki walk around their city, doing normal things, like visiting temples, improperly using playground equipment, which is the cutest shit I've ever seen in my life, and going grocery shopping. It's the intimate moments like these that the manga lacked, that the anime has done a phenomenal job at including. The anime usually puts these quiet, intimate moments in the beginning or the ending, which does a great job at not disrupting the pacing from the manga. They go home, cycle their routines, and eat a meal that Aki has prepared. These moments of bonding allow the audience to get more attached to the characters and gives the audience ample time to care about the little details in these characters' lives, as well as the bonds that they form with one another. Denji and company fall asleep after eating, and Aki goes outside to smoke a cigarette like usual. We get time to see Aki reflect on his actions after pulling out the cigarette Himeno gave him. Easy revenge. This expression could mean a lot of things, but more than anything, I think it represents closure. He smokes the cigarette, pulls back a fat dart of that Sharpie pack. His last connection to Himeno, the last thing she ever manages to relate to him, has been expended. It was used exactly how she wanted him to use it, when he needed something to take the edge off. We cut back to Denji, who has fallen asleep at the table, and then we segue to the scene from the manga I spoke of earlier. This interaction allows for a clean segue to this otherwise considered non sequitur from the manga. The point of view rail shot allows for a more claustrophobic feeling and intense build up to the door, rather than just a straight cut to it. The tension is thick when it is built like this. Denji looks around conspicuously and hears Pochita call out to him. He tells Denji to never open the door, and he is pulled out of his dream. Instead of including Denji waking up, it has been exchanged for a teaser of a character who's going to come in the following season. Although we don't get to see her face, you probably already know who it is, or have seen her face online before. Although in the off chance you have never seen her, I will refrain from saying her name. We then hard cut to the end of the episode, and the end of the season. Before this episode ends, I want to talk about the director and storyboarder Ryu Nakayama, who also helped doing storyboarding on episode 7 and did both direction and storyboarding for episode 1. Ryu Nakayama worked on a lot on this show and was also in charge as this show's director. Nakayama was heavily involved in the creation of this anime, and he's also worked on many other anime. So many that I might even go so far as to say he is another juggernaut who has worked on the show. He worked on key animation of One Punch Man, Sword Art Online, and the opening of Shippuden. Storyboarder for Jujutsu Kaisen, key animation on Kill la Kill, Fate, Flip Flappers, Madoka, Space Dandy, Idolmasters, Pokemon, Nizumonogatari, the opening for Monster Musume? Key animation on Eromanga Sensei? No! Ryu! I thought things were going to be different this time. Anyways, with such a large body of work, he seems to be fit for the role. He's worked as a director many times for individual episodes of shows, but for productions or projects, he's directed Raisen Dietere, a music video. And that's that. That video also got 53 million views though, so he's gotta be doing something right. This is the first show that he's fully directed, and I think for the most part, he did a pretty damn good job, especially with the pressure of the production being on him. I hear that the Japanese audience is much more vocal with their distaste for Nakayama as a director, and even petitions have been made in order to remake the anime. I think most people's distaste comes from the fact that it is different from the manga. But like, yeah, no shit it's different. Of course it's different. But at the same time, I still understand. I was excited for Chainsaw Man, but more than anything, I wanted to see Tatsuki Fujimoto's work and style properly transferred to animation and motion. But we didn't get that. We got the story he made with a fresh coat of slick cinematic paint, which left a lot of fans disappointed when it wasn't a gritty and dark style that had messy lines and an incredible use of harsh contrasting darks and lights. Chainsaw Man the anime is a phenomenal anime, but most of the time I find it to be just an okay adaptation. It is absolutely serviceable, and I'm glad it was done justice, given the time, attention, care, and detail that it deserves. But more than anything, I'm hoping that people want more, and they pick up the manga. I will most likely be misinterpreted on purpose by a lot of people who watch this video who don't have the ability to use critical thinking skills, and I will probably be purposely misconstrued as an elitist who thinks manga is better and the anime is obsolete and should be nothing more than a vehicle to turn watchers into readers, but I just want to clarify that's not how I think. I know people get a kick out of arguing and believing in what they think wholeheartedly, but I like to ask that if you disagree or have some kind of conflicting opinion, please let me know down below. I'm not only curious, but waiting with bated breath to see what it is that other people think, and I need to know if I'm alone on my views of the anime and the manga. But wait, I still have more to say. More than anything, I know a lot of people are going to be upset that I had something negative to say. People will 100% be mad that they are misunderstanding the purpose of a video like this. So let me be clear. I love the anime. It's cinematic, it's gorgeous, it's utilizing animation to do things that only animation can do, and it is improving upon the source material in a lot of ways. I love this anime, but I also love the manga. So to you, the viewer, say, why not both? Please, if you like the show, if you love Chainsaw Man, then read the manga. Even if you're watching the anime first and picking up the manga after, it is still wholeheartedly worth the read. The anime is doing things differently on purpose, and I am aware of that. The anime excels in nearly every facet. Phenomenal expression, realistic animation, gorgeous scenery, top of the line CGI. This doesn't just feel like cinema, it is cinema. On the other hand, the manga excels in its paneling, its full spreads, its expressions, the contrast between its silliness and the ability to take itself seriously. The amount of detail that can be crammed into a panel and the ability to read every detail with ease. Putting down the manga after picking it up is really difficult, and it's not often that a manga can captivate me for as many chapters at a time as Chainsaw Man could. The quiet and intimate moments that trust you, the reader, to pick up on the small nuances without telling you how you should be feeling or telling you how the characters feel. It's all done so masterfully. The anime is incredible anime and the manga is an incredible manga. They are both separate, incredible works of art, so comparing them holds no merit other than convincing an anime only to pick up the manga. So just consume both. There's no reason that if you love Chainsaw Man that you should have to pick between one or the other. They're both amazing, so just go watch and read them both. I'd recommend the manga before the anime, especially since the anime is coming out pretty slowly. The manga's already finished. At least part 1 is over, and part 2 has started. So go pick up the manga. Like a Barnes & Noble or some shit, I don't know. I don't typically make long analysis videos like this, but going in depth was a lot of fun, so maybe I'll do it again sometime. If you made it to the end of this video, I really appreciate it. I have no Patreon and I make no money, so if you enjoyed this video, then just subscribe or leave a like. Maybe share this video with someone who you think might enjoy it. If you're interested in furthering the discussion or sharing what you think, then please feel free to tell me how you feel or what you think. I mean, it's only fair. I've been talking your ear off for like 25 minutes. Okay, goodbye. I can finally play Sekiro again, god damn.